Welcome to another episode of Electric City Television's Roundtable Discussions. I'm your host, Travis Prince, and today our guest is Kym Fetsko. Hey, Kym, how's it going?
Okay, it's nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, thank you for coming to chat with me. So normally with the show, I just always ask my guests to tell us a little bit about yourself, your educational history, and where you're from, and things like that.
Sure. So I was born in a tiny town in Berks County, Pennsylvania Dutch country.
Oh, wow.
Town of 800 people. So I was ready to go to the big city, which is where I went to college. And I went to University of the Arts, where I met my husband, who was from Dunmore. So that's how I ended up a transplant up in this area. But we've been here now about 16 years.
That's awesome. And so what do you do professionally?
So many of your viewers might have heard my name before because I send out a lot of emails from the University of Scranton. I work in the library, but I'm involved in two programs, the Friends of the Library and the Schemmel Forum.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. So how does your art fit into this? Wait a minute. So first of all, what did you graduate in? Your degree is in?
So my degree was in illustration.
Illustrations.
Yes.
Okay.
So and I did spend a good 25 years doing freelance illustration.
Okay.
And when the pandemic hit, I decided, I'm not enjoying it as much as I once was. So I think I'd rather pursue abstract painting, which is something that I was always interested in. But, you have people telling you you're never going to make a living. Maybe let's think about, going into teaching or doing this or that. And so I never really gave it the time that I wanted to invest in it. But then illustration just wasn't bringing me joy anymore. So I thought, pandemic time, I'm at home. I have all this time on my hands. So let's give it a go.
So after 25 years of being an illustrator, you just didn't find the joy in that anymore and wanted to switch your medium, your artistic style.
Yeah.
And that led you to the abstract form. Mm-hmm. And so how long have you been doing abstract art?
Since March of 2020. So not very long at all.
Wow. So what was the shift? Where did that inspiration come from? Because I don't know, with myself, I feel like I've been creating my certain style for so long. It'd be hard for me to do something totally different from what I'm doing now. Maybe a slight variation or to a certain degree, but to completely jump into what we would consider like a different genre is kind of tough. And so what was that catalyst that initially said, I really want to try something different than my normal illustration techniques?
Well, it's funny because I'm such a control freak, like with my artwork normally. And so the illustration fit in really well with that because I was very detail oriented. I was very precise. I did a lot of like realism, but like caricature type realism. Yeah. But the thing that really didn't interest me anymore was being given the concept and having really no like artistic control over, there were some projects that I would get where they had like the colors even laid out.
Wow.
Or they would send me the sketch and they're like, well, this is how we want it. And then
you just clean it up and
define it
a little bit better.
So it just wasn't as enjoyable as it initially was. And the industry is changing. Yeah. Like a lot of these magazines are going under or they're going all digital and they're not hiring artists anymore.
Yeah.
So that, the industry was drying up so that really like the cream of the crop were the ones that were getting, the assignments, which is understandable.
And I can definitely understand that because the old saying, if you love what you do for a living, you'll never work a day in your life. But when something, especially a creative outlet, when it feels too much like work and less like creativity, it's definitely not fun anymore.
No, it's not.
So I can really understand that. I pass up a lot of gigs or commissions just because it's too strenuous or too gridded. It won't allow for my creative liberty.
Sure.
to do what I want to do with it, and I really just don't like projects like that.
I know, and I think like the end result, it's evident in the end result. Like you don't see the artist like
No, it's like a stamp,
Exactly.
stamp, and not
Exactly.
that flow. So after getting frustrated with the career in illustrations and transitioning into more fluent type of visuals, what was some of your starting points to bridge the gap between illustrations and your abstract art?
So I initially started with encaustic painting. So that's like when you use like hot wax.
Okay.
So it's like you can get paint in different colors. It's hot wax, you put it on, but then you use like a heat element
Wow.
to fuse it onto, each layer.
Is there a special kind of wax for that, or?
Yeah, it's definitely, it's just encaustic wax. It's beeswax and a little bit of resin in there to harden up. But I didn't really like having a torch, like a blowtorch, like in my house, because my studio's in my house. And it just made me a little bit nervous.
That's understandable.
So, yeah, I mean, the smell was amazing, though. If you like the smell of beeswax, like, you can't go wrong. But so I switched to cold wax a few months later because, A, you don't need to heat it, so I didn't need to use the blowtorch anymore. And B, so you mix it with oil paint, and it's just, it's beeswax, but it has a little solvent in it, so it like thickens up your oil paint, and then it also speeds up the drying time. So I always wanted to paint in oils. I just was kind of a traditionalist in that respect. I did do some oil painting when I was in college, and I really enjoyed it. But it was a drying time that always got to me. And I'm an impatient kind of person, so that didn't work well for me at all.
Yeah.
So the cold wax really started, I gave it a try. And then before I knew it, like I was buying can after can, I was making more and more paintings, and I was really enjoying the process of using it.
Was the cold wax, was that the initial medium that you gravitated towards in the beginning, or did you try anything else? Or?
So it was really just the wax in general, but it was definitely the hot wax, the encaustic wax, that was first for me. And then after a month or two, what I was doing at that point, I was taking vintage photographs, which is something that I'm passionate about. I'm kind of our family's like collector of all of our old history.
And have to document everything.
Exactly. I keep the family tree. I'm adding to it, but I have I was blessed to be gifted some of our old family portraits.
Wow.
So they're hanging in my house, and I have an old house in Dunmore, so it fits in fine. But so I found some photographs that I did an abstract background for, and then I digitally combined them, got them printed on fine art paper, and then I put wax on top and embellished the wax. Wow. So with like some oil paint and some carvings, because you can dig into it because it's a soluble or a solid substance on top of your image. So it was fun to go back in and do some of the things that I love to do, like the fine art, like line work, which is kind of reminiscent of, my illustrative jobs. But so it was kind of like the bridge between the two. So it still had that illustration kind of feel to it with the photographs, but I made it more artistic with the abstract backgrounds.
That sounds really interesting. Sounds like a pretty lengthy process with a lot of different parts to it, but I can imagine the end result. It's just amazing. How do people take to your new style of art when for so long, so many people knew you as an illustrator, and now you're doing this completely different thing from your illustrations? What do people think about that?
Well, at least in this day and age, it's easier with social media, so I just made a new account. It wasn't any of my illustration work, it was just strictly my abstracts. I've gained a decent following on that now, and since I've been doing it, I've entered a couple juried shows where I was selected. So, that kind of gave me the momentum, I'm on the right track, I think.
That confidence booster.
Absolutely.
And that's one of my biggest gripes too with the art world is illustrators aren't taken as serious as some other art forms. One of my favorite influential artist of all time, Norman Rockwell, was an illustrator for most of his career. And even though I loved his work, I never knew that his illustrations weren't considered like high value art. And it seems really weird that illustrators don't get the recognition or the credit that they deserve for their artistic ability to produce these images. But that's just the art world that we live in. So with your abstract, where do you pull your inspirations from? Since you haven't been doing it as long as you were doing illustrations, did you look towards other artists for influence, or take any classes or anything like that to kind of get you prepared for this type of style?
Well, I am a consummate learner, so I'm always, either doing an online class or looking on YouTube. I mean, you find everything on YouTube.
YouTube University.
Exactly. So I did learn a lot about how to do the oil and cold wax, through YouTube initially. But then when I was doing the encaustic work, the first paintings that I was doing, so Jasper Johns, he's a big influence to me. Just his work with like the American flag and things like that, I was always drawn to that. Nowadays, though, it's more with the oil and cold wax. They're more contemporary artists. So they're Jerry McLaughlin and Rebecca Crowell have written a book on it, like the book on oil and cold wax. So I read that, and then I was like, oh, I want to try this, and I want to try this. And then they actually started an online academy last year.
Wow.
So I joined that, and it's just been great. Like, it's a great learning community. They have a syllabus every semester, or every season they'll go through like different topics. So not only am I still learning about oil and cold wax, but going back to like my roots, I guess, with the like art school feel.
Yeah.
So I'm learning again about composition, about, value and contrast and all of that, which, over the years of just being given projects after projects and do it exactly this way, you kind of forget about it.
Yeah. It's an ever-growing process. Like you say, you never can learn enough. You can always continue to learn more and more.
Exactly. And I have to say, it does help that I work in the library, so I have access
with all
to
the source material you can
all the
ever
source
want.
material is right under my fingertips.
So I want to talk about your process of creating your abstract pieces, because I've never worked with wax or acoustics or anything like that. So first of all, this piece, does it have a title to it?
It's called The Root of It All.
The Root of It All. And I really like that. So initially, what was your concept for this piece?
So I have a show coming up at the Wonderstone Gallery in Dunmore. So I was exploring doing like a chakra series with like, a couple paintings in each chakra. And so there would be almost like a spectrum of colors, because you would have, so the root chakra is red, is the color. And then I was planning on going through like all of them. And I still might do it, but I get pulled in different directions, and I kind of, it's hard for me to settle on one like topic. But for these paintings, I actually did a couple for the root chakra. And so it's like, you need to have an open like root chakra in order to be accepting of all the other chakras.
To receive, yes.
Right. So I've been learning a lot about like pushing through barriers, or like things I'm holding on to in my past and that sort of thing. So this was an exploration into that. And my other chakra that I was really like concentrating on was the communication one, the throat chakra. So like the blue is representative of that. So the two that I struggle with the most are kind of in this painting. And this took like months for me to complete, because I would get to it and then I'm like, I don't know, there's something missing.
Yeah.
And it's bringing up all these like emotion and past, things that I haven't quite worked through. So this is a very emotional piece for me.
The first thing that I can see is the layers in it, and the depth to it, the blue, then the hard yellow lines, and the red, encompasses it all. It's just so striking to look at, and the title, you can, like you say, the root of it all, you can see how it grows and comes up through the different layers of the chakras. Now, what do you use? Well, let me ask it this way. You subtract wax from the layers, the previous layer?
It's kind of both.
Yeah.
So it's like this push and pull to make a painting. So this is actually the beginning of a painting.
Mm-hmm.
So you can kind of see like there's, I use a lot of mark making in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So these are like Marabou art pencils. There's R&F pigment sticks, which are just like oil paint in sticks, if you're familiar with those. So I'll do like some work on that. And it's really just like activating the surface and getting it out and like starting. And then I'll usually like, instead of wasting paint, for the ones that I'm just beginning, I'll just clean my palette with like whatever paint I have left so that you'll eventually see it comes up as an under layer. But then I'll use solvent and go back in so you can see some of like the different layers that are underneath.
Yeah.
Like this has blue underneath, and then up here there's like a lot of different media, or a lot of different layers in the top portion for sure. But it's like I might go on with like pan pastels and add a layer of just like, you know, a glaze.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, well, I don't know if I like that. So then I'll go back in with a solvent and then like take it back off. And then you have other layers popping up. And that's what's so amazing about working this way. For me, that always had things planned out. Like, you don't know what's going to happen.
The canvas will speak to you itself.
Exactly.
And tell you what it needs to add. Another detail I see in your work is the line work, almost like scratching, or and it's reminiscent to me of script writing almost, or calligraphy, but very loose and dominant at the same. It's so hard for me to explain how I feel about these markings, but they add this extra to it. This kind of like it shocks me a little bit to see that. What is your train of thought when you start implementing that texture to the canvas?
Well, I've always been drawn to paintings that have text in them, but I wanted these to not have anything like literal in them. So it's called asemic writing, and it's resembling writing, but it's not, you know. So you kind of let loose, and like, you know, you're writing as if like you were. For me, like I'm usually like saying something in my head, you know, but it's not the actual letters that are going down onto the surface. And then, you know, you want to cover up some of them and have some come forward. So it's like not like smacking you in the face, but it's a lot of, again, like that push and pull of, you know, pushing things down and then like letting others like rise to the top. So it's really just listening to the painting and seeing like where it wants you to go.
I like it a lot, and once again, that it seems like a language in itself, unspeakable language, but definitely a language. I really enjoy this piece. Let's check out some more of your stuff.
Sure. All right.
Oh, let's straight down.
Should I put it on here?
Yes.
So this one is another one in the root chakra series that I was, you know, developing. It's called ataraxis, which means like a relief or like peace. And at that point when I was doing this painting, it was a really stressful time. It was, you know, kind of chaotic few months that I was going through. And you can kind of see like, there's a lot of energy in this piece.
It really is. It really is. That dark explosion that's there, obviously, is the center focal point of the piece. But as you slowly wrap your eyes around and flow with it, you can see a little bit of calming blue that's trying to subdue that very dark explosion. It's it's really compelling, and then the scratching in it again, and the layers. Your layering is really what gets me.
Thank you.
Here I can see 5 different layers, and each layer is distinctly textured, and like you say, this push and pull.
Like this one, you can see a little more of like the Yosemite writing, like in
Yes.
there, and like a little bit up through here.
So, how do you choose your color palette?
Well, this one was kind of easy because, again, it was in that chakra series. So, you know, whatever chakra I was looking at was the color that I was going to be
Main
focusing
dominant
on.
color, yeah.
But what I like to do is, if I know it's going to be like a red painting or an orange painting, is put the complementary color underneath. And that's why these paintings take a little bit of time,
So you
because
start with a green or a blue, and
Exactly.
to get to your reds and purples.
and it might not ever show up in the final part,
But
the
it's
final
there,
painting, but it's
yeah.
there. And like sometimes, you know, you can see it come through.
Yeah.
But and there's a little bit of green up in this one. But so it's like a surprise almost,
Yeah.
which I get excited to see the end of the painting.
Well, normally do traditional portraiture, and last year I had something I wanted to say, and I couldn't do it with imagery, and so I had to incorporate abstractness to a project that I was working on. And sometimes that's the only way that you can get the emotion out and to make it feel right. And I can feel the emotions in your work.
Thank you.
It's very powerful.
That means a lot. Thank you very much.
Let's look at something else.
Sure. So this one was actually one of the very first oil and cold wax paintings that I did. And this was accepted in a juried show at the Atlantic Highlands Council in New Jersey. And that was where I was like, oh, well, maybe I'm onto something. I
Yeah.
think this would be okay. But this one's called A Long Way Home. And it was, I painted it not long after I had dropped my youngest away at college. And even though it was across the state, like it just felt like she was so far away. So there was a lot of emotion going into this one too. But I feel like you can see the progress of where I started and where I'm going. Like now things aren't as chaotic, I guess, because a lot of these paintings, I wasn't quite honed in on the craft yet, or even the medium. And now I feel like I've really got a grasp on it. So I'm giving it a little more time and thought, and not that this one didn't have you know, time or thought going into it, but I feel like I've grown so much in the last year and a half doing this.
Well, for this to be one of your earlier pieces, it's striking. What I like about it is the numerous layers, but then you were able to flatten it out and keep the layers. It's brilliant how you were able to do this and to have the texture but not have the texture. It's amazing. And A Long Way from Home, or
A Long Way Home.
A Long Way Home. Now I see a light at the end of the tunnel when I look at this. You know, and there's all this chaos around us and all this distraction. But if you can focus just enough, you can see your way through all of that. This piece is lovely. I'm really partial to blue, so the blues in here are just really kicking me right now.
And that's usually my go-to color, which is weird that I have so many red paintings recently. But that was another, thing I wanted to explore as well. Like, get out of your comfort zone. Let's try things that we haven't tried before. And it's always good to try new things.
Yeah.
So.
Scary, difficult, but normally it's fulfilling and worthwhile. Just like you said, to just step outside the line a little bit and try something different. these pieces are lovely, lovely, lovely.
Thank you. The funny thing is, like, I was under the mindset, like, oh, abstract painting isn't that difficult. And I know a lot of people think that. You know, you go and see it and you're like, oh, my 5-year-old could paint that, or, you know, we've all heard it before. And now that I've been doing it, it is so much harder than my illustrations were.
It's a difference in letting a toddler splatter some paint around and trying to organize your emotions in a way that you can present them to a viewer, and for a viewer to pick up on that, it's not easy at all.
No.
And once again, me being a portrait artist, I felt the same way for a long time until, like I said, I wanted to say something, and I could not say it with the imagery that I'm used to using. And so I said, well, how can I feel something, and it feels blue, it feels orange, it feels sweeping from left to right, and that's the only way that you're able to get it out. And it's not easy, once again, to organize those emotions and to lay them out, and you're able to do this so well after 25 years of hardcore illustration, and in a very short amount of time you've been able to completely switch gears and come up with this new awesome style of yours. It's fascinating. You have some more to show us.
Just these smaller ones. I don't know if you want to. Vertical. Yep. Thanks. So I've been doing works on paper recently, which, so most of my paintings I do in a square format. Yeah, pretty much all of my works on panel are in a square format, but I also like to try and experiment with things, so I'll use paper. And, you know, paper comes in a rectangular format. So I did this mini series. There's actually 4 pieces in this collection. But I wanted to experiment with, again, like the mark making and like different colors that I don't normally use, because yellow is like my nemesis. I don't go to yellow very often, and I'm still not sold on it, but I don't know. I don't hate it in these paintings, so I guess that's good. But I've been doing some of the works on paper this spring, and then getting them matted and framed under glass. So it just gives my collection a little bit more depth.
Yeah, a little different variety.
Yeah, because not everybody, you know, likes the paintings on panel. Like they're more traditional and would like, you know, a painting matted and framed in glass.
How do you like working with paper?
I've actually been really happy with some of my paintings that I've done on it. I feel like they're some of the stronger paintings that I've done. So I've been considering doing like more rectangular paintings in my new collection.
And you're using the same mediums on paper that you use on your panel?
Yeah, so it's Arches oil paper. So if I don't know if you're familiar with it, but so you don't have to gesso it, but it takes oil paint, and it doesn't like soak through. I don't know how it's treated, but it's treated with something. So it's great for working with oil paint. So if you wanted to like practice on, you know, and not waste like it, because panels are kind of pricey.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to practice and experiment, you know, with different things, like it's good to just give a paper a shot.
Awesome. Well, I really, really appreciate you coming to have this discussion with me today. Could you tell the viewers if we wanted to follow you on social media and keep up with your work, where could we find you?
Sure. So I am at Kym Fetsko on Instagram. I also have a YouTube channel. So I do like process videos, or kind of like time-lapse process videos. Nice. So that's also Kym Fetsko Creative. And I'm on Facebook at Kym Fetsko Creative as well.
Awesome.
Yeah,
awesome.
So those are the 3. But yeah, I'd love to connect with more people. It would be great, and I really appreciate you having me on.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
This has been another episode of Electric City Television's Roundtable Discussions. I'm your host, Travis Prince, and our guest for today was Kym Fetsko. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.